Namaste. Hemant Gupta is back with us
Yeah,
for one
Bunty.
more round of random contemplation.
Yes.
It is a joy to catch him midweek and kind of coax, cajole, coerce him into being on the podcast. Surely because of the joy of contemplation that he brings to all the varied kind of thoughts I have on quite a few subjects. Today I have been uh, pontificating on artificial intelligence. So, without wasting much time, Hemant, the first question I would want to ask you uh, before one gets into the what is called artificial intelligence today, how do you view intelligence? What is intelligence? And is it different from wisdom in any manner?
Uh, um, so 2 by 2 immediately crops up, Bunty. So two things. One is I'll try to come from some other angle. वो सामने वाले डोर से मैं बेल बजा के नहीं आऊंगा पीछे की
Okay.
खिड़की से आ रहा हूँ so brace for some stupidity. Um, I mean, the moment I hear the word artificial intelligence, a 2 by 2 crops up in my head, putting artificial and non-artificial on the x-axis and intelligence and non-intelligence on the y-axis.
Oh, okay.
So obviously we get artificial intelligence, artificial non-intelligence, artificial intelligence, non-artificial non-intelligence, non-artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
Um, so it then tells me, okay, what is it that is not artificial and what is it that is not intelligence? So this is a classic move in ancient Indian wisdom called neti neti, or in modern management called theory of elimination, where much like a sculptor which is trying to remove what is not, so that the final thing is actually sculpted out, and what remains is what is. Uh, so maybe I'll try to sculpt a little bit. It won't give us the final sculpture, but at least remove some of the obstacles that come in the way of understanding this. Um I remember very recently. So to start with, I don't have a complete working definition of the question that you have. I'm attempting it as we speak. Uh, the first intuition that comes to me is, for anything, the moment I say intelligence, I'm assuming already that there is two. There is something applying something to another thing, and that gives a perspective of it being intelligent or not, or an intelligence applied or not.
Hmm.
Uh, so there is duality already involved. The question is, uh, then can we frame it and say a non-intelligent actor applying intelligence on something on which intelligence can be applied, right? For something has to offer itself to intelligence for it to be applied to it.
So are you saying subject and object, to
You
simplify it?
you could go there. You could go there also, but I'm just trying to parse this and say there is the intelligencer, intelligence, and intelligency, and that's the rubric. Now, it may also be the case that this is a feedback loop. The intelligencer becomes the intelligency, and the intelligency becomes the intelligencer. And if you meditate a little more, the intelligencer can also be the intelligency. I can be applying the intelligence on my own self, on my own perception, on my own body, fitness, and whatever sort of stuff. So that's the first two. These are the first two things: the 2 by 2, and the second bit. The third bit that comes to me is, um, we've heard the moment this word comes, artificial intelligence. There's another word that comes along in popular articles called artificial general intelligence, AGI, or generative intelligence.
Okay.
So then puts me to ask, what could general intelligence be? So then if I take general intelligence and I look at the world, I can get general intelligence and particular intelligence, right? So general intelligence seems and feels like something that is overarching the very various particular intelligence, which means intelligence about intelligence can be general intelligence, and taken to extreme can be wisdom.
Okay.
That's what is coming up for me, Bunty, right now.
Okay. Of all the quote unquote intelligent things that you said, the one thing that touched me uh, in a deeper manner was the intelligencer when he chooses to study his own intelligence. Uh, if I framed it right, or rather, I will make it simply. I will simplify it. The person studying his own intelligence. Could that be termed as wisdom?
Are you saying studying or studying?
Studying,
Studying.
learning about.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It could be said as meta intelligence, which is intelligence about intelligence, uh, or general intelligence also. Intelligence about intelligence, and taken to extreme would go to the space of. I mean, I'll just take 10 more seconds and hand over to you. So, taken to extreme, one gets very finer aspects of the intelligencer, the process of intelligence, the application of intelligence, and the intelligency, and one goes down that rabbit hole, ultimately reaches a point where there are the complete immersion of symbols and rationality and reason and language and logic and this and that, and then the intelligencer becomes the intelligency and the intelligence, all immersed into one. Might be slightly abstract, but that's how I view it.
Okay. So let me try and see if I have an example there. So my writing process, you come to me, you give me a brief. Uh, I have to write an introduction for Hemant Gupta. Um, okay, I will stop there. Introduction to Hemant Gupta, what he does. And I study about you. I start writing about you. And I write with the intelligence of being a writer, as well as this briefing being the uh, superficial intelligence given to me in terms of uh, understanding the subject that I'm writing about. Okay. While writing, I write whatever I want to write. Say 10 lines I write about you. And I come back to you, say, this is how I'm introducing you. And you talk to me in a manner which kind of suddenly tells me, oh, this person is not what I have written about. He has either good, bad, doesn't matter. Now my experience of listening to you has completely honed my intelligence in a different manner. And I go back and rewrite the whole thing from an experience of knowing you, which is more, I'll keep it simple again instead of getting into better words, experience vis-a-vis just reading something, which is what my first question, or rather the reason for choosing this topic was. That there is an intelligence of which you can hear about or read about, and there is an intelligence which you experience, which I loosely call wisdom because it becomes mine and I do various kinds of processing. Do you want to respond to this? I don't have a question, but this is what I want to place in front of you.
So, on an ongoing basis, there are activities happening and activities we want to do.
Yeah.
So imagine again a 2 by 2 activities happening, not happening, activities we want to do, not want to do. So we get happening, want to do, happening, not want to do, not happening, not want to do, not happening, want to do, right? So not happening, not want to do could be, when our minds are running riot and we don't know how to control them, right? It's happening and we don't want it to be the case. Uh, intelligence could be loosely connected to the goals we have and how we pursue it in step functions and we achieve them. Something helps us achieve them. Um, so in that sense, those are things that might be happening, might not be happening, but we want it to happen.
Okay.
So that's the first thing that comes up for me as I hear you, Bunty. In which case, if you write about me, so suppose let's create a character whom you and I just don't know. We don't even know the name.
Mm.
Let's say there is a guy called Kiki, and I ask you to write about Kiki. Now you don't have anything except this word Kiki, right? So you'll try to have mental associations and try and visualize and imagine what Kiki could be like, what Kiki could be doing, uh, whether Kiki is a person or a thing or a place, right? Uh, but the moment I say, okay, halt there, I'll give you one more data point. So as we keep increasing the data points, we get a mesh. And within the mesh, we try and create a narrative. Now,
Mm.
up to the point that you are actually able to meet Kiki. And suppose I reveal to you, Kiki was my pseudonym, not pseudonym. What is it called? Uh,
Yeah, pseudonym.
pseudonym, right?
Yeah, pseudonym.
तो वो मेरा ही pseudonym था. Now suddenly you'll say, oh, you've been writing about Kiki and then you meet Hemant and you know Hemant, and now you want to have your mind is carrying both the data point, both the narrative, and now you will say, okay, I'll keep this narrative because it's a fictional narrative, and when I interact with the fiction, I'll have that narrative. When I interact with Hemant, I know I'm not interacting with Kiki, so I'll have that as a narrative to work on. Uh, so we keep so there is a bunch of activities that are happening and we want to do stuff around them, with them, on them, for certain goals and step functions that help us achieve them. uh, could have semblance of past intelligence or current intelligence. Past intelligence might become banal to us because we've been using it for a long time. Like this
Yeah,
word that I'm using is not my own, right? The first time ever somebody created language, how intelligent it would have been, right? Right now, I don't even see the miracle of this thing that is happening, right?
yeah.
It just goes into the background. So yeah, I think that, and the final thing is, uh, suppose an intelligence is applied once, and an intelligence is applied multiple times, and an intelligence is applied all the time in my life, right? So it can be applied once, few times, many times, all the times. Um, Anything that has the feature of many and all times application could fall under the rubric of wisdom because it transcends context, it transcends people, it transcends a lot of experiences. But the flip side is, if I'm not aware, I could start seeing it as boring and banal also because it's been applied so many times in so many contexts.
Yeah.
That is what is emerging for me, Bunty. Does that make sense?
One of the thoughts running in my head is that maybe we are having too much fun with dissecting it, but since it does not have a goal, it might seem a little obtuse to people who are watching it. But luckily, it also struck a new chord that I was talking to another friend about. And I've been thinking on this for a while. So I'll give you the context for you to understand and for the audience to get it. I follow Prashant Kishore quite a lot of late. And somewhere in one of his interviews, he mentioned a book called Wisdom of Crowds. Uh, Personally, till the time he mentioned it, uh, people coming together, I don't trust them too much, even if they are for the best cause in history. Uh, because all it takes is a little spark to create a fire when there are too many people coming together. Uh, this is one context. The what I was talking with a friend, he said, "Do you believe there is a collective consciousness that we draw from, and the people who are evolved?" quote unquote saints right now, scientists, if you want to call them or whatever. They plug into it and are able to access a lot more than we are able to because of our preoccupation with wherever we stand. I've been thinking on this. Honestly, I don't have very strong views yet because this is a new area that I'm tinkering around with. So my question is fairly specific, although the context might not have been. Where does individual agency crisscross with collective wisdom? And is it possible, given the times today where there is chaos almost in every country around the world, for various reasons, we are seeing unspoken of economic meltdowns and wars and uh, curbing of rights, huge judgments by us, by others, by almost every agency that has any agency at all. Yet, personally, is it possible to think, act intelligently, wisely, which makes my life better on a daily basis? So the specific is what are the actions, what are the thoughts, what are the deeds that I can do, and how they are colored by the world at large, and what is my role in it. I've given you the context specifically because I want the answer to be contemporary, even if it is steeped in wisdom, in case it is.
Yeah. I'm reminded of a guy called Dave Snowden. He's a contemporary complexity thinker and consultant, ex-IBM guy. I remember listening to one of his podcasts, and he said that every dead corpse on Mount Everest was once an extremely motivated individual with a lot of belief in his or her own confidence, intelligence, and wisdom. There is another quote, which is the road to hell is also paved with good intentions sometimes. Connecting it back to Prashant Kishorji, while there is truth in wisdom of crowds, but I'm reminded of, I think, an 18th century thinker, Tocqueville, who incidentally was sent by the French dispensation to study American democracy. And he came back and he wrote a bunch of stuff. But I think somewhere in his writing, he also mentioned the tyranny of the majority. While there is wisdom of crowd, which is, collective, and it could be majority or minority. But I think we are not far away always from being absolutely tyrannical in the moment. Even now, I could speak something so ghastly inappropriate that everything that we did for the last 25 minutes could be shed to, that could overpower. So these first rubric come to mind, and the fourth rubric that comes to mind is somehow the human nature, unless cultivated, has come to become extremely biased towards negativity. So one drop of negativity weighs much more than, a series of positive things that are around or have happened or about to happen. So human nature does have, generally speaking, broadly speaking, negativity bias. How does this tie into what you just mentioned? Whether or not do we have individual agency and the aspect of the collective conscious? So first, let me invoke two 2x2 grids. The first one is, let's put collective on the x-axis and conscious on the y-axis. And let's expand the x-axis with collective and non-collective, and conscious and subconscious and non-conscious. So all four are operating at all given point of time. The collective conscious is as much operating with collective unconscious. The non-collective non-conscious or unconscious is also operating. The non-collective conscious is also operating, which may be individualistic conscious, let's say. And let's segue into the individual agency that you invoked, Manti. So you get individual collective on the x-axis, y-axis agency, non-agency. So you get individual agency, individual non-agency, non-individual non-agency, non-individual agency. So as I speak with Bunty right now, what could be the individual non-agency? For example, let's say I had something very heavy to eat last night, and it's still not digested in my stomach. I could have been said to have the agency of choosing whether or not to have it last night. But right now, I don't have the agency. The digestive system is doing what it is doing. And whatever it is creating in terms of my energy inside, which is showing up right now in the conversation, is something over which I will only have the agency to the extent I've been disciplining myself towards. So, मान लो मेरे को I don't have posture. Suppose somebody told me कि आपकी एजेंस अगर आपकी डाइजेस्टिव सिस्टम या बॉडी की एनर्जी इन द मोमेंट ठीक नहीं है तो सिटिंग स्ट्रेट विद स्पाइन इरेक्ट could help, right? Suppose I've been practicing this in the past and I've tinkered with it. So at this moment, I can invoke that agency and make agency work on the non-agency and then show up in a manner, right? So if I take just this small rubric that agency cannot exist without non-agency, freedom cannot exist without non-freedom, there's a feedback loop into it. They spiral upwards or downwards. Over a period of time, I can, to some extent, try and make it slightly more elastic. Applicable at individual level, it can be applicable at a slightly more, expanded to a few people around, a few tribe around level, and move forward. But there will never be a point in time where you would have something what physics called as stable equilibrium. You'll always have some kind of unstable equilibrium, which with the slightest of nonsensical thing in the world can snap it back to chaos and disorder. I don't know whether this all makes sense, or do I need to simplify or add some things to it?
I'll try to simplify. You tell me if I've got it correctly. So I'm reminded of Gandhi trying the non-violence as an experiment the first time around. And then there is this little tidbit where the guys go and have a skirmish with a police station and burn it down or something like that. Chori Chara incident or something it's called, if I remember correctly. Now Gandhi obviously is a superhuman being in terms of thought processes and fabulous in his understanding of his own and thereby collective nature and our tendency towards violence. And he chose a path and had the requisite charisma to make the crowds work in one direction. But you did mention that it takes a little bit of nonsense for it to spring back to normal again. So that little bit of nonsense was the hatred or the restraint breaking away and people acting the way they wanted and going back to normal. Normal being violent in that case. Have I understood your example correctly? The way
Yeah. Yeah, just one correct addition, I would say. One man's nonsense can be another man's intelligence, or one man's rebel can be another man's revolution or reform. So वो भी एक unfortunate या fortunate way in which how systems are, the systems we live in.
Okay. Point taken, but I would not want to dissect it further at this point because by itself, what you're covering is a lot of ground.
Yeah, I'll leave it to you. I'll leave it.
And to also place my context in what you just said, it would be that we are talking about generally accepted truths to start with. Like you said, something you shouldn't have had at night because it kind of upset your stomach. And if a lot of us have had that collective experience at some point of time, and we realize, okay, we have this in the night at this time, and we are of a certain age and certain time, whatever. So this would create this kind of thing. Obviously, there will be some exceptions to this rule, and obviously there will be exceptions to that rule as well. So, but we are not getting into a splitting of that idea. Um,
Just one input if I may,
yeah,
Bunty.
please.
जैसे आप ट्रूथ की बात की है ना, तो मुझे because I got exposed to this just a year back, it's extremely fresh. Dr. Hemant Sinha, who passed away some months back, one of the contemporary scholars of multiple wisdom, Indian, ancient and Western.
Okay.
उनके एक पॉडकास्ट पे मैंने सुना था कि 3 ट्रूथ होते हैं, 3 सच्चाई होती है उनके हिसाब से। एक है प्रतिभासित ट्रूथ, एक है व्यवहारिक ट्रूथ, एक है परमार्थिक ट्रूथ। प्रतिभासित is your own truth, your own first person truth. Vyavaharik is you have to bring that truth to exchange with people and live that truth together for certain goals. Paramarthik is you do it, it's beyond, right? And so why this was important, Bunty, is because our era today is also been coined as a post-truth era, by the way. So जो आप कह रहे हैं जनरली एक्सेप्टेड ट्रूथ, वो थोड़ा सा भी उसको कॉन्टेक्स्ट में देखना होगा, बिकॉज आई थिंक वी आर इन ट्रूथ वॉर्स राइट नाउ। मेरा ट्रूथ और आपके ट्रूथ का, या मेरे ट्राइब के ट्रूथ का और आपके ट्राइब के ट्रूथ का मैसिव वॉर जोन में है हम लोग।
It's too heavy for me to counter right now, but okay, I come from a place of instinct in that space, and being born in the era that I was, the 70s, there was still some discussion and still some traditions to be followed. There was a mix of learning. The grades we followed were genuinely seen as grades, and it wasn't the post-truth area, if I were to use the term you used. You trusted them. You saw them. Sometimes they had feet of clay as well, be it the film stars or other idols in the political area, or anybody else who was an influencer of those times, male or female. We saw them. We saw their truths, took it with a pinch of salt. We used our own thinking. So there was this beautiful complexity to creating our own ideas of what the world was. And it was okay. The one did not have to cross with each other's truths. It was okay if you had your own truth and I had mine. Discussion wasn't, while it was volatile in a way which was very verbal. I wouldn't come out to hit you because you had a different point of view. It was okay. We were intelligent enough to understand that we would change our opinions at times. Since we have a paucity of time, I want to jump to the question which makes it imperative, since we are calling this artificial intelligence. How do you view the recent term artificial intelligence and the way it is supposedly going to take over our traditional jobs and mindsets and thinking, and know what we are going to think next, and all kinds of things that are being imposed upon it? Do you have a open-ended point of view, or else I have a specific question? Do you also look at, like, we created it, somehow we continue thinking of it that it has just happened, but it has happened because we've been working in that direction for quite a while. We've been so fascinated by automation that we refuse to see uh, the fallbacks for a larger part of majority uh, in the world. Uh, and I'm not being socialist by saying that. I'm saying it exists. So if you have a lack of people with only 5,000 people having access to a certain kind of knowledge, obviously, what are we going to do with the others? And what are the others going to do with their lives? And how can we presume that it's going to be just a modern kind of slavery and there will be no revolution or no reaction from this multitude? In fact, I have also just voiced it for the first time because I did not see it like that before now. So do you want to react to either your view or answering this context that I've just set?
Bunty, very interesting invocation. I'm reminded of two things. One is I haven't read the book, but I've heard a lot, and I've heard excerpts about the book written by Yuval Noah Harari called *Sapiens*. And if I recall it right, he's talking about how from our hunter-gatherer mode, when we had agriculture, we sort of settled down in some sense. Uh, Interestingly, the moment we settled down in agriculture, it also meant that agriculture settled us in a so there was a reciprocation. We sort of tamed the environment, but the environment also tamed us in certain ways. So there was a mutual domestication kind of thing. Now, if I go down this path, then if I just take a step back and let's take this moment that I am with Bunty right now on this beautiful day, the afternoon, sun's bright. I see a very nice squirrel coming and feasting on some nuts. Of all the possible things that you and I can do in the next minute or the next few minutes or next hour, we would end up doing something and not all the possibilities, right? So of all the possibilities between the two of us in the next few minutes, we'll invoke and mutually bring about some possibilities. Now, the moment we bring about these possibilities, and then in the next meeting, you bring about some other possibilities with somebody else, and I bring about some possibilities with somebody else. So, of all the possibilities between us and inside of us and mutually, we are able to only harvest some of the possibilities depending on the political, economic, social of the times. And depending on that, you get some kind of agriculture, a mutual human social agriculture, not the natural agriculture, not the field-based agriculture, but this is like harvesting each other, mutually harvesting each other. So we are able to sow certain seeds and get certain fruits or weeds out of them. A part of it went down the path of being automated. Whether in the automating first the motor and hands and legs functions of human being, and then going on to automate cognitive functions of the human beings. To that extent, whatever has been made possible to be harvested mutually, a huge substantial chunk of it could be said that artificial intelligence or general intelligence might be able to poach, acquire, and displace human uh, abilities in that sense. But the question to me is, are there other possibilities that could be mutually harvested, which has not been harvested ever? My intuition says yes. If there are spaces created, or we mutually assert and get it created with the political, economic, social of our time, then there could be possibilities emerging there which humans have not seen before. But believing it would happen on its own would be too naive. I think things have happened in humanity through tensions, and both reforms and revolutions have been littering human history and imagination. And I don't think the road forward is going to be any different from that. Uh, I'm I'm optimistic about human enterprise, and I'm also pessimistic about human stupidity. Uh, so I don't know which way the nail would turn, but I know for a fact that बनने में जमाना निकल जाएगा, सदियां निकल जाएगी, बिगाड़ने में 1 मिनट लगेगा. तो I'll rest it here if something is coming up for you.
I didn't think of that. It's a good hopeful thing. I have an interesting question here. Again, it is about intelligence in some manner. When I look at nature and our participation with it, obviously there are some good things and some abysmal things that come up in mind as far as human beings are concerned. Our myopia forces us to never move beyond survival. And on the other hand, this same idea triggers us to create things that were unimaginable before. So I cannot really put down my finger and say this is absolutely bad or absolutely good either. Yet there is some merit to thinking that we are part of nature and we cannot outthink nature. So what on the surface may seem negative, over a period of time and space may turn out to be positive. And what seems very positive today. So an example, like many of the present day political dispensations all over the world, in almost every country we have a certain mindset coming to power in the last 2 decades, 2.5 decades, rising slowly to power. They were at the opposing end most of the time. Whatever little bit of my understanding, I may be wrong technically in some places, but I'm generalizing the question. So people who worked hard to come to power, rightly so, there's no question about there needed to be a shift of thinking, shift of approach. But one finds that overwhelmingly the same lines are being told in this manner or that. Socially, environmentally, physically, nationally, religiously, all kinds of thought processes are being followed in a manner where it supports one part of the society and is not really tilting towards the have-nots most times. Now, my question is not about, it's not a social comment. It is more an intrinsically human comment on how we are growing till date. We cannot really say that we've reached the pinnacle of growth yet. So, is the presumption that human beings know it all, or know better, or know the best among all other species, really hurting us? Because this intelligence doesn't seem to dissect itself away from the survival mode, which all other animals are also facing, but they are facing the brunt of it because of our stupidity or our myopia, our inability to grasp nature as a whole. And I'm talking about people who are in power or who are in decision making authorities. Honestly, all kinds of people exist in the world. So there will be one-off examples that you can give and say, look, this guy is thinking like this guy is thinking like this. But I'm talking about humanity as a whole. So the larger part going back to the wisdom of the crowd seems to tilt towards negatives and violence and um, rupturing nature from its very base almost. Just that we don't understand that nature cannot be ruptured and we are just part of it, and how much ever we fight it, the ultimate loss is ours at all points. So do you want to comment on this understanding that, oh, we know it all or we understand it, and uh, this limited thinking of let me grasp this for now. Why do I have to worry about the generations that are going to come? We are myopic even in that sense. I would think, irrespective of whoever says whatever, very few people in the history of the world have really thought about generations except for their own photographs, paintings, palaces to remain. They've really not sat down to work upon how the world could be a better place. I'm talking leadership. Okay. So do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, Bunty, wonderful invitations again. 6, 7 points that come to me as you speak. So sometimes I'm fortunate to create co-discovery workshops and or sessions. And one of the things that I like to bring to my awareness in other people is the following. Who was the richest person at the time of Kabir? Who was the most beautiful person at the time of Kabir? Who was the most uh, hardworking person at the time of Kabir? Who was the most evilish person at the time of Kabir? And invariably, in all the workshops that I've done or sessions that I've done, nobody gets an answer to any of these questions. And yet we remember Kabir. At least a huge number of them remember Kabir. And Kabir here is a placeholder. I think our human civilization is blessed and bejeweled with so many ratnas and pearls who have also offered, created for the tapestry that we are enjoying right now. So that's my first invocation. The second invocation is on the lines of what we just mentioned a few questions back, was that we are in some people call it the post-truth world. In some sense, we are also in a cosmological war, Bunty. What I mean by that is, what's my fundamental worldview and existential worldview? So if somebody comes from the space of saying that everything is Maya, then their pursuits and goals and their achievements and failures and their regrets and gratitude would be slightly different. If somebody says everything is Leela, then that would be different. If somebody says everything is sinful, you've been born with sins and you have to purify, or the karma theory, or any other cosmological worldview, or somebody comes and says that fundamentally, it's all about human enterprise. A few people break the frontiers and the impossibles and turn part of it into possibles. So in that sense, we are in a cosmological war. So one challenge that a lot of people are perhaps not understanding, or even if they are understanding, they're not able to stake it in the ground and create a framework around, is when I exchange my views and my opinions with the other, there are a lot of implicit assumptions and beliefs that also are firing up my opinions and judgments and perceptions. And if there is a fundamental disagreement at that implicit level, how do we move from there? What do we do and how do we move from there? Is a project which requires tremendous skill development at the individual level, creating space and mechanism to have those exchanges in context of the fact that everything else in the world is also pacing up like never before. So you can see that at once you are called upon, if you have to move forward, to slow down and go deeper, while everything else is picking up pace and wants it to be, now and mimetic and viral, all of it. That's the paradox we have to deal with, is what I see. That's my second point. So Kabir and this paradox. And just taking the paradox a little further, in the last decade, a lot of people have written a lot of things. There are two thinkers that cross my imagination right now. One is a Harvard psychologist, Steven Pinker, who has written a book called The Enlightenment Now. And there's another, I think, French thinker, Thomas Piketty. Pinker talks about, he picks up data points and he's able to show how our humanity has actually progressed. So the infant mortality is down. The infant mortality rates were very high earlier. They're down now. A lot of people are above the poverty line and not. There are many more states in the world that are democratic. Now, we may argue it's not the democracy we want, but they are still better than dictatorship and other form. So he lays out case for reason and science. Pinker does. And then there is Piketty, who talks about the growing divide and the growing inequality, where less than 1% population of the planet control such humongous power and resources that decide and design the fate of you and me. The jury is still out. Those debates are still happening, in different spheres of life. That's the third thing that comes to my mind, Bunty. On power, and segueing this into power, those whoever has power, I think the key question is, whoever has power, what are they doing with that power? When I break that down and bring it to my own self, and I ask myself, do I have some power? And what am I doing with that power? Case in point is, I remember very clearly, 28 years back, that particular fateful day, I wanted to talk to somebody, and I could not stitch a single sentence in English because I didn't know how to speak in English. And today I can speak in English to some extent. What am I doing with this power? How am I using this power? Am I peddling this power for self-perpetuation, for getting some brownie points from people, wanting to impress them? Or am I using this power to truly share and not show off? And am I able to use this power to empower others? So each of us has power. What are we doing with that power? So I think we need to have self-governance around that. And yes, we should hold each other accountable for the powers that they have also. So that's the fourth point that comes to me. You mentioned an interesting point that our species has popularly judged as having the highest form or a better form of intelligence than any other species. And I'm reminded of an interesting thinker called E.O. Wilson, who had this interesting quote. He says, we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology.
Can you repeat this?
Yeah. So there is this interesting thinker called E.O. Wilson, alphabet E, alphabet O, Wilson, who says that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. So yes, we've got here, we've built these institutions, we've built these technologies, but have we really been able to master our emotions and our unbridled desires or unreflected desires? And so long as we are not able to do it, we are going to always run the risk of existential crisis. Yeah, these are some of the things that came up. But
Okay. Your answer was more a social commentary of teaching stuff that you've read and bringing it to the fore in terms of, I think, from starting from the point of Kabir, where you said that maybe all that we are running around to achieve needs to be cross-checked at a personal level. Now I'm trying to combine all of these from Kabir onwards till the last part where you're talking institutions, technology, and our own inability to deal with this mammoth juggernaut that we've created as a society. The question that I find most interesting in my life most of the time now, uh, as an intelligent human being, I seem to have a point of view about everything in the country, in the world. Um, I also have the fallacy of justifying my approach um, to make myself sound better or right in most conversations. Sometimes I'm able to see it, sometimes I'm unable to see it, but it exists and it exists in a very big manner. The I, me, myself prism is very hard to break out of. Having said that, there is also the beauty of studying this I, me, myself prism uh, vis-a-vis what is happening to it. If I'm able to distance myself and look at myself as a creature of some worthy of some study, the mind space that I occupy, the physicality of who I am. One of the interesting things that we learn during the course of any kind of self-study is the self is changing at a rate which is faster than ever before. In the sense of what I looked like or thought about 2 years back was different from now. What I thought about 20 years back was completely different from now. So, to continue the example that you gave, you did not know any sentence of English at the time and space of 28 years back. But at that point, you weren't learning English to necessarily achieve a certain goal. It might have been that you thought there was some lacuna in your understanding because you did not know a particular language and you wanted to pursue it for self gratification of it, even if it is a noble order or just survival for that matter. 28 years down, you are wise enough to relook and try and connect the dots in a manner that suit your purpose of wanting to give to the world. That does not either put you on a pedestal, nor does it make me scoff at the person who was 28 years back. The Hemant then required that to learn. The Hemant now is trying to have a more holistic view and try and combine both. I think somewhere each individual has to find this uh, sense of responsibility to whatever their journey has been. Yesterday, I was speaking to somebody who said this word journey is very loose. I don't like to use it because it kind of presupposes that the journey word is very huge and cannot really, when I'm referring it to you, I'm not actually counting each and every station that happened on my journey or each and every part of my experience. So, really speaking, it is perhaps not as truthful or as big as it seems so. But it does not take away the fact that we need to keep studying ourselves as individuals above all, I guess. Because so today, when this podcast reaches, say, 10 people or 100 people or 600 people, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is if it reaches that one person who uses this to uh, introspect and find their own journey enriched by that introspection and perhaps give back if he or she is willing to. But for themselves, it should enrich them. There is no question about that. It cannot be suddenly, we cannot be putting out a statement in the society that we had this huge discussion and we've arrived at a conclusion that humankind is good, bad, ugly, whatever conclusion we arrive at. Because that would still be simplifying it a bit too much. The complexity of human beings abides in all of us, I guess. Abide is not the right term, but say arises in us from time to time, again and again. And that complexity has to be respected, even as we try to simplify what we are talking about. So while I'm talking to you, I have to calculate whether I'm saying everything with a honest bent of mind or not. Whether the words are justifying the thought that I have, or is there no thought and I'm just speaking with the knowledge that they will find some meaning on its own. Now, these are complexities that are going on. Maybe all three are going on at the same time. I do not know. I do not know, honestly. Uh, but that I'm aware that this being called Bunty is sitting down and talking to you. I want to ask you a specific question. These were just points that were running in my head. The specific question is there is this interesting center point that I reach at times, which is a good mix of vulnerability. That oh, I do not know. And a huge amount of confidence that I am part of a human race that has been trying to seek these same answers forever. And for myself, I'm not even saying that I can come on camera and come and say, okay, look, I am enlightened now and I know this. That may happen, may not happen, depends on that moment in time if it happens. To give you a more practical example, during the Buddha's time, one of the things that was prohibited was never, the monks could not come and talk about something that they had not achieved, because that would be deemed a lie. And he specifically meant enlightenment. And to me, enlightenment actually is understanding the truth in its entirety for that being. Because a lot of them have different personality traits, they continue. So Hemant continues to be Hemant, Bunty continues to be Bunty, Kabir and Nanak, and everybody continues to be what they are. But some part of them has been freed from the burden of understanding. They are, simply they are, and they are experiencing their truth, whatever it is. That is true of us, that has been true of all the Buddhas. So do you also feel anything like that? This time I would prefer that you do not give me a reference sheerly, because this question is very Hemant for me in my head. Uh, the point of all of, including all the references that come to you, because that is your modus operandi of arriving at your truth. Uh, over a period, I have come to respect that and understand that you internalize it, work with it, and come to a point. But this is more experiential. When you start, suppose I'm asking you this question. Now, when you start thinking, at that point, do you feel vulnerable? Do you feel powerful? Do you feel anything other than these two emotions that I mentioned? What is your state? And then you can obviously answer or comment on what I said.
So, Bunty, I'll be helped if you can just frame it, or maybe again state the question, because I'm just still trying to get a grasp of the question.
Okay, okay, I'll bring it down to, once I was asked by this lady who was had gone for a massage, but she was a spiritual kind of lady, and she asked me, "Where are you, Bunty?" And I started answering, "Oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that." She stopped me and she said, "Where are you?" And for the next 15 minutes, I couldn't speak at all. I had tears in my eyes because I just didn't know where I was. So, well, where are you, him, in this space and moment while we are talking this?
There's a poem that happened through me to me. जब एक दूसरे से जब Sorry, can we just give me a second? हाँ. जब खुद से बिसरे हैं तो एक दूसरे से तीसरे हैं.
No.
So when I'm in my own, the pure being, then that's that. And then whenever I dip into it, become aware of it, that sort of shines in through what I speak, what I gesture, what I intake, what I give. And yes, there are times of not knowing, disabled, emotions running riot, minds running riot, uncertainty, insecure, fear, all the kleshas, let's say asmita, vidya, rag, dvesha, binivesh. They're there through the day, they keep popping up. But the days that I do my practices, and those practices bless me, those days automatically create spaces for the parikrama, which is compassion, friendliness, acceptance, gratitude, awe, laughter, forgiveness, apology. Those days are slightly different from the days where I'm only in kleshas, including vulnerability. And right at this very moment, I just feel privileged, honestly, that I'm getting this opportunity to speak, that somebody on the other side is gifting such a beautiful warmth and presence and hearing, which is so rare in this world. And as I unfold, there's so many things that are unfolding for the first time ever for me also. So I'm deeply grateful to you. And yes, I am vulnerable, even as I complete my answer.
Okay, I have a very interesting question. I wanted to stay in this space for a moment more because that would be very nice. So am I. I'm also grateful. Do you think vulnerability can be used as a strength? It's something that I've been working on for quite some time, and there are people who come and praise me and go and all that happens, but it doesn't make a dent because it's a very genuine attempt, and being vulnerable is not really cannot be enjoyed all the time. There are times when you really feel uh, out of place everywhere and you don't know what to deal with it, how to deal with it. Mhm. I'm trying to figure out what it means. So, what are your thoughts on the space that you find yourself in?
There is a term. There is a term in I think disorder or disease profiling, which is called chronic. And anything which is chronic and degenerates you as a human being, degenerates your biology, degenerates your mental space, degenerates your social space, in the long run, where your ability to regenerate keeps diminishing over a period of time, that's concerning. But being vulnerable means that you are in uncharted territory, uh, which also means possibilities for some fresh and positive openings also, much as failures also. So yeah, I will go ahead.
Okay. Do you also reach a point where there are no words to describe what is being felt because of you? You actually cancelled out saying positives may arise, but well, as much as failures would. So in a way, both of them would arise or not arise, going by your two by twos. Here we could actually be at a point where the X and Y access don't generate only. And is not knowing always vulnerability, or it could also be um, calmness?
Yeah, I think it could be that, yes, and it could be many other things. Yeah, I think it can be. Over the years, I have come to believe that when I hold any single concept or category or experience or a pattern, uh, my practice and my insight tells me it never exists in isolation. It is intermeshed with so many other practices and words and concepts. I may hold one very dear and not want to change it, but that does not mean that the others are not changing and not affecting it, or are not getting affected by it. So, in that sense, I would very easily pass a very blanket statement that vulnerabilities could lead to some factors in a positive manner. Vulnerabilities could lead to some factors in a negative manner. Over a period of time, when I become aware of them, I become a good student and cultivate Vivek. I'm able to rise above the positives and the negatives, or channelize them more often in a slightly better manner in life.
Um, One last question coming to mind. This is getting far more deeper for my intellect to figure out what to ask next. Uh, how useful is silence in the kind of journey that we are talking about?
Huge.
And why?
Imagine a 2 by 2, uh, body on the x-axis and mind on the y-axis. Body is still, body is moving. Mind is still, mind is moving. So you get 4 quadrants: body still, mind still, body still, mind moving, body moving, mind moving, body moving, mind still. If we observe, we've come to most of the people who will watch this video, or most of the people have brought their body to a relative stillness while their mind is running riot. And I think over a period of time, one needs to be able to cultivate practices to have on demand of any of these quadrants. कि जब मैं चाहूँ माइंड भी स्टिल हो जाए, जब मैं चाहूँ बॉडी भी स्टिल हो जाए, जब मैं चाहूँ तो उठ के काम भी करूँ, प्रोक्रेस्टिनेट ना करूँ, बोरिंग नहीं फील करूँ, कर्मा करूँ, ड्यूटी करूँ, जब मैं चाहूँ दोनों करूँ और फ्लो स्टेट में रहूँ. But that's a practice one has to develop over time. तो उस संदर्भ में stillness and silence have some close connect. The moment I'm able to experience them, I understand, or maybe I experience how it is contributing to the movement function of the mind and speech and social uh, energies and my body, all of that.
Answer, because you have answered and also left a question for me in my head. For many, many years, I've been wanting to, it's just a fantasy to learn how these uh, martial art warriors from China, Japan, the movies that we watch, uh, the Shaolins, and they are being taught by giving them the most amazingly difficult tasks, and they'll sleep on a rope and they'll be standing on fire and doing all kinds of things. So there was always this fantasy, oh, I will not be able to do this in this lifetime because of where I'm born and where my age is going and whatever. But it is very interesting as a study, and how does one really know? Today you've answered how can one pursue that line of thought using silence and getting into movement, at least for the understanding of the intellect. It won't be an experiential thing to a larger extent, but some parts of it can also be adapted in my present, whatever regimen that I am doing for keeping myself fit. Okay, what am I doing and why am I feeling lazy? Why am I not putting in the extra effort? Why am I fearful if I do this and will they start paining or whatever? Uh, like always, every random contemplation leaves a lot for more. This has been an absolute joy, sheerly because um, very loosely, 5 minutes prior to our chat, I had decided that we would do this intelligence, artificial intelligence, and I did not know what I would want to ask. And whatever I would have thought of, I certainly haven't asked because artificial intelligence by the day is becoming a very firm view that it is in a certain manner, and we seem to have spoken about anything but the firmness with which we understand it in the present day nomenclature that happens. I do not know where that went away, but it's been a fantastic journey of thought that we've traversed in trying to study intelligence. I just hope that we come out wiser and irrespective of the hugely boring and complex bits in the beginning where they might be a lot of audience might have felt that this is going only as a philosophical talk. I think it has really managed to find its own rhythm over a period. Thank you so much, Hemant, and I shall keep catching you. You have no escape. You are my go-to in most times when I do not have immediate guests, but also that any topic that we speak never seems frivolous at all. No matter what topic I think of, we are able to cover a lot of ground, thankfully. And so thanks for co-creating it, like you call it.
Yes.
Someday I'll
Yes.
start using the term. It's not very easy on my tongue. I just like the space that is being created, and sometimes I think we are being created as much
Same
as
here.
even co-creating it.
Same here, Bunty. Thank you so much for holding this space and co-discovering. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.